Not see you or myself, but I can see your screen. So I guess
Okay,
that's good
perfect,
enough.
perfect, perfect. So, so Trisha and I are Solutions Cubed, and Trisha's going to be kicking it off. But I just do want to give a little bit of notice to EDC Communications. EDC Communications is a training partner of ours. They do all sorts of leadership and communications and coaching and things like that on the business level. So we're actually partners with them and provide instructors and course developers for them. So that's where our material is coming from. So that's their plug, and I am going to turn it over to Trisha.
Thanks, Mike. So just want to introduce ourselves. As Mike said, we are the owners of Solutions Cubed. We are an IT management company, and we are based in northern New Jersey. Mike mentioned that he completed the Emerging Leaders Program a few years ago, and he enjoyed that a lot, made a lot of strides there, learned a lot, met a lot of good people, and is still very actively involved, and I've gotten involved with him as well. We own a technology company, and we are both educated engineers, and we have been in the field of computers and networking for many years. But our company, I like to say our company also has a soft side. The soft side being what we often consider soft skills. The technical skills are the hard skills. The soft skills include presentation techniques, like we're doing today, teaching skills, image consulting, and honestly, that's what I love. That's what has become something very near and dear to my heart, something I love engaging people on. I love coming out to you, teaching you how to be better presenters, how to interact with others in the marketplace, how to communicate better, how to present yourself better, how to be heard, and how to listen. So teaching, presenting, that's something that I love to do, and I hope that a little bit of that comes through during this presentation.
Awesome. And it's kind of like, what is this IT company doing soft skill training? Trisha and I were both instructors at Hewlett Packard for a number of years, and one of the courses they offered was the soft skill training. One course that Trisha was very involved in, DQT, delivering quality training. So it's always been, training in general has always been a passion of ours, and being able to do more on the soft skill side was always very attractive. Trisha much better at it than I am, but you got both of us, and so it's a joint package here.
And of course, that's not true at all, but we have very different styles. And that's one of the things that we want you to try to appreciate here, that you can have different personalities, different styles, different approaches, but you can still be great presenters. You want your personality to shine through when you communicate to your audience. And hopefully you'll see the differences that we come to you with are strengths rather than weaknesses.
And everybody's going through, well, we're assuming that most of the participants on the call are coming up on their growth plan presentation. Some of you may have gone through it already, but we know that typically there's a lot of nervousness and a lot of discomfort in being in front of that group. But the truth is, as business owners and business leaders, we are always presenting to someone. So you're always selling yourself, you're selling your company. And to do so with confidence, that's what we want to project today and help you with. Communicating your message clearly, communicating with confidence, making your audience feel like they're part of the communication. They're not being communicated at, they're being communicated with. So hopefully the tips and techniques and the things that we talk about today will be of benefit to each of you. Practice them because you will find that even outside of business, be it your church or some club that you're a part of, or just with your friend group, there'll be a noticeable difference when you communicate confidently, that you engage the people that you're talking to in your conversation, and that the more comfortable they feel, the stronger the relationship built. And we all know that that is critically important with our clients and our partners. So the things that we're going to hit, we just introduced ourselves. The things that we'll be talking about today are listed on the slide. We want to make sure that you have a strong open, that you are well-versed in key delivery skills that we'll be covering today. We want to make sure content is concise and to the point, that we're not rambling at times, and making sure that we're communicating clearly. We'll talk about best ways to use PowerPoints and other visuals, although we know that well, at least when I went through the program, PowerPoints were not permitted, so I'm going to make that assumption, but it doesn't mean that the next meeting that you have tomorrow or next week or whenever that you're not going to be using PowerPoint. So we want to make sure that you're very comfortable with the strategy on using PowerPoints. In your messaging, tell a story, have a conversation, tell a story. It makes people feel very comfortable, but then also have smooth transitions from topic to topic. We'll also talk about the art of Q&A and finishing your presentation with a strong close. And then we'll talk a little bit about our company at the end. And we're gonna give a couple of tips and other items that you might find helpful for your presentation coming up.
So we'd like to start our discussion here talking about starting strong. You want to give a presentation, you want to speak to your audience, you want to be a good communicator, and one of the most important things you can do to this end is to have a very strong start to your presentation. You don't want to kind of walk into the room and make them think this is the last place you want to be, and I got to do this and get through this, and what time is it, and how much time do I have left, and what do I have to cover? Because if you're not excited, they won't be excited. So you want to start strong with energy. You want to have an energetic welcome. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to share what I have with you, because if you are excited, they'll be excited. It's contagious, and you want them to grab that that energy from you. You want to be dispersing that energy throughout the room. One of the things that I struggle with in a video presentation is you're not in the room with me. I am the kind of person who gets energy from people. If I'm in a room presenting, I have people that I can make eye contact with. I stand in front of the room, but I don't stay in front of the room. I will walk around the room. I'll walk into my audience. I'll stand next to different individuals. I'll make eye contact. I will own the room. I will make the room my own. And if that's a possibility to do that when you're presenting, I encourage you to take advantage of that, to get out from behind the podium, to walk down the little stairs if you're on a platform, to engage your audience not only vocally and visually, but physically as well. Step into their space. I am challenged when I don't have an audience in the room with me. That's why I have a big old teddy bear sitting on the table in front of me, so that I can make believe I have someone here to listen to me talk, to get excited with me. So if any of you feel challenged in that area, starting strong, being energetic, I can relate simply because I'm doing a video presentation, and I find it a little harder to get excited when there's no people physically in the room with me. If you find it a little harder to get excited, know that you're not alone. You're not the only one who struggles with that. One of the things that's very effective to start a presentation with is something to engage your audience. I love to take a poll or ask a question. In a video environment such as this, taking a poll, asking a question, not always so easy because most of you are on mute. By the time you find the button to unmute yourself, we've moved on from that question or that poll. But when you're live in front of a group, starting with a poll, how many of you are nervous about speaking in front of a group? How many of you give presentations on a regular basis? So that's a question, and it's a little poll. Ask for a show of hands or a nod of the head, or you can start with a story, giving a story from your own experience, from your business life or your personal life, for that matter. Stories from your personal life are not inappropriate. People can relate. Most people have personal lives, so they can relate to stories that you might want to share. Examples, statistics. You're going for expressing your passion, expressing your excitement, expressing your interest in what you're there to teach them or to present to them. Because like we said, if you're excited about it, they'll get excited about it. You want to make sure that you lay out the objectives you're trying to hit, the agenda, as we've gone over the agenda that we'll be covering, any ground rules. If you're in a situation where you're in a hotel and you need to tell people certain logistical pieces of information, you know, what time the breaks will be, where are the restrooms, what time is lunch, those sorts of things. You want to kind of get that out so that there aren't questions and they're not sitting there wondering. And don't forget to introduce yourself. Tell about your background and where you're going with the presentation, but make sure you do it with energy and excitement.
Tricia and I taught this course for this workshop for a group out of our local Chamber of Commerce, and we had a group of 30 or 40 people in the room, and Tricia got up and she did her, bang zoom, lots of energy, lots of oomph, and then I followed her, and I was hemming, I was hawing, I was missing my coffee. I was talking about how difficult it was to get to this place, how bad the parking was, and how bad the traffic is, and like Tricia said, all of that whining, and you could just see the energy just deflate from the audience. Tricia got them nice and high, and then I got them nice and low, and it was kind of good to say, okay, which would you prefer? So when you're going in front of that room, as Tricia said, come in strong, because the individuals that are in that audience, they have a lot on their mind. They have places they might rather be or need to be, but they're choosing to be there. Help them to feel that it is so, their time is being so well spent. It's so valuable. You're providing something that they really need, and you believe it. Let them see the passion come through, the energy come through, and just that excitement, because if you're communicating fear, trepidation, uncertainty, in their mind, realizing it or not, they're going to be thinking, this speaker is fearful, trepid, intimidated, all those things. So come on with confidence, and don't feel like, hey, I don't have all the answers, so now I'm very insecure. Come on with, they're here to hear what I have to say, and this is a great use of your time and my time. And I know even in the technology area, we are technologists, and it's always easier to come into a customer meeting or a presentation where you're going to be communicating something with the client, and they're there because they asked you to come in, not because of a cold call where the meeting was set up and they've got 16 other things they'd rather be doing, but they made the time to come to hear what you had to say. Go in with that kind of a mindset that what you're sharing is valuable, and that will come across to them. Okay, here's the point where I would say, any questions? Let's talk further. What do you think? But we'll do that during the Q&A session at the end. So let's talk about some key delivery skills. This is going to sound so basic and so logical and so common sense, but I think you'll all agree these are the things that individuals struggle with. So let's talk about them one at a time. We'll give you some tips and some helps here. First one is eye contact. If you are watching a presenter and their eyes are darting all around, what's really happening is the last thing they want to do is lock eyes with you. And so when they don't have eye contact with you, you tend not to have eye contact with them. Eye contact becomes one of the most important techniques that you can master to pull your audience in. And the reason is because when you're having eye contact, and I'm not talking about, quick, our eyes met and now I'm shooting to somebody else, eyes met, shooting to somebody else, because that communicates fear, that communicates intimidation, that communicates a lack of confidence. The most important thing that you can do to lock in your audience is to, when you have eye contact, pick one person and just talk to them. You're presenting to the group, so you're still projecting, but talk to that one person and hold on to that eye contact. Don't shoot your eyes around. Don't, look at the tops of their heads or underneath their chairs or over at the wall clock. Lock eyes in, and I know Trisha's going to have a technique that she uses that will help you here. But lock into those eyes and have the conversation one-on-one. Continue to project so everyone else is hearing you. Many times I will walk, doesn't matter how big or small the room is, I will walk right up to that person I'm having eye contact with, and I will get in that 2 to 3 feet space, and I will just have a conversation with that person. What it does for not only that person, because obviously you're looking at them, so they're looking back at you and they are now fully engaged. But what you've done with the rest of your audience is you've said, you're next. I'm coming to you next. And matter of fact, there's times I'll do that. I'll say, Tom, I'm coming over to you, or Bob, I'm coming over to you. But When you lock in like that, walk right up to them, have a conversation. And what it does is it not only engages that individual, but it engages the entire audience, because now they know that you as the speaker will be coming their way at some point. What you find is they tend to do email less, they tend to text message less, they tend to daydream less, fall asleep less, because they know you're coming their way at some point and they're not going to be aware of it. A really key technique for grabbing your audience's attention. The other is your voice. I tend to be soft-spoken, and depending on what I'm trying to get across or whatever, but you'll notice she's high volume, high energy. She gets really excited. So with your voice, try the best you can not to be monotone, but to change when you're trying to make a point. Maybe you're coming down lower so they're really drawing in to listen, or if you're excited, you're really getting loud, high energy. Let your tone and volume vary. If you're in that situation where it's just a monotone presentation, even the best techniques will still put people to sleep because you're lulling them to sleep. That change in volume, tone, intonation, that's all keeping them engaged and active, and it's not lulling them to sleep. As far as facial expression, if you're happy, show it. Smile. Smile with your eyes. One thing to just smile with your lips and your eyes are saying fear, 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 fear. But if you're smiling with your whole face and your eyes, it just communicates this sense of confidence and excitement that you're happy to be there. So use your facial expressions. If you're expressing something that's frustrating, show frustration. If you're showing something that's sad, show sad. But use your facial expressions to really engage your audience with what you're thinking and feeling. And if you're seeing that their mind is somewhere, relate with them through facial expressions. Gestures become really important. Moving around with your body. If you're standing there stiff because you're afraid to move, what happens as you move is you loosen things up. So you loosen your thoughts, you loosen the words that are coming out. The more you move, and I'm not talking about crazy movement, but the more you move, the more comfortable you will feel. I probably put on 3 or 4 miles in a 15-minute presentation because I like to walk all over the place and engage different parts of the room. And the more you're moving, the more they have to kind of follow and engage to kind of keep track of where you are and what you're doing. So that's just another technique. Use your hands. I'm Italian. I like to use my hands, but use your hands in a way that's purposeful and meaningful. Make sure your movement is purposeful and meaningful, not wandering haphazardly. But if I'm going over to Sue, I'm heading over to Sue. If I'm going toward the podium, I'm going toward the podium. If I'm heading over to the left or the right side of the room, I'm going there with purpose in my movement to establish a new position or posture in the room. Your personal posture becomes very important, so that, standing up straight, not slouching, not leaning, hands in the pocket. Hey, if you want to have your hands in your pocket periodically, not a big deal. Just don't make it a permanent resting spot for your hands. Let your hands get out and have movement. If you do have your hands in your pocket, make sure before you go into this presentation, your keys are not in your pocket. Your coins are not in your pocket. Other things that are going to rattle and make noise are not in your pocket. It's totally fine and acceptable to put your hands in your pocket periodically, but when you all of a sudden your safety blanket, so to speak, your coins, your keys, your chapstick, whatever it might be, you're constantly playing with it in your pocket. It becomes a real distraction for your audience, not for you, because it's that safety net, and so you're not even realizing it. But the jingling of coins and chains and whatever it might be is going to be a distraction for your audience. So be careful about what's in your pocket. And then also be very cautious about what we call filler words. Filler words are nothing more than a reason for you to pause and to think. So when you say like, you use those filler words, there's no value to the word. There's none whatsoever. And we all do it. but be cognizant of it. That's one of those skills that you want to hone over time. Be very careful. It is better in a presentation when you're trying to think of that next word you want to say, and or is always coming out of your mouth. All that's happening is you're thinking, you're pausing to think. So just pause to think with your mouth closed, and just give that second, give it a thought, come back to it. Rather see that in a presentation than have people counting or checking off the number of times I say during a presentation. Really important.
And that does happen. People sometimes, if you're chronic with the filler words, it becomes a joke. And how many times did she say or how many uhs, or various expressions that people like to use. So you don't want to find yourself in that position. Which I just did, right? Just a couple of comments about some of the things Mike just covered. He mentioned that I have a little trick for eye contact that I used when I was first teaching. I found myself feeling intimidated when I was trying to make eye contact with people, because I'd look at them and then I'd feel like we were in a stare down, and that made me feel very uncomfortable. I found that if I looked at their forehead or even their nose, but avoided their eyes, they couldn't tell. I wasn't a foot away from them. I was toward the front of the room and they were seated in the room somewhere. So if you feel a little bit intimidated about making eye contact with someone, just look at their head, look at their forehead, look at their hair, look at their nose, look at their mouths. You don't have to look right into their eyes if you find that a little bit intimidating. It will still appear as though you're making eye contact and you're moving from person to person. Have some eye contact with one person, have a little chat with that person while you're presenting, and then pick another person in the room and have a little chat with them, making eye contact with that person. That way you're making it personal. You're not talking to the room at large so much as you're talking to the individuals in the room, and they will feel as though you're engaging them individually, and that really draws people in. It keeps people engaged. Like Mike said, their turn's coming. Whether you're getting in their personal space or you're simply making eye contact, you want people to be ready to receive your glance when you look their way. And that will keep them more engaged in what you're saying, less apt to be emailing or texting or whatever they might be doing as they sit and listen to your presentation. Also, people who are seasoned presenters or who do a lot of it, many of these key delivery skills come relatively naturally because you've practiced them over time. If you're new to presenting, it may seem like, wow, there's a big list here. How am I going to remember all this stuff? It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to remember. And the best thing we can tell you is spend some time thinking about these. Write these down, make a list, and practice them. It's so important to practice eye contact, practice modulating your voice, not being monotone. Practice your facial expressions. Mike mentioned smiling. That's one of the best things you can do to engage someone. You smile, even if someone is kind of looking at you like, I'm not interested in this, I don't want to be here, smiling will break down barriers. And that's so important to do that, to allow people to let you in to their space. Smiling will do that. That's in one-on-one conversations, smiling is important. And it's important when you're in front of a room of 300 people. So you can't go wrong with a smile, for sure. Can't go wrong with that.
You know, Tricia, we have always talked about finding that friendly face in the audience. And, you know, maybe we should share a little bit about the friendly face. Like, I know in an audience, especially sometimes if it's in the morning or it's a conference, or, you know, sometimes individuals just don't want to be there. And so you get in front of the room and it's like, oh my, what do I have to face today? But if you can find that one friendly face, and then of course you find another friendly face, and you find another friendly face, that person that wants to be there, that person that you've smiled at, so they've returned that smile, or, you know, you've glanced at and they've engaged and they show energy. It's always easier in the beginning to find that one friendly face and engage with them, and then find that next friendly face and engage with them. Always be looking for the friendly face. Doesn't mean you ignore everyone else, but in the initial time of getting started with your presentation, that will help you feel more comfortable. And by engaging those first few friendly faces, you'll find that the rest of the audience or the group becomes much more engaged. So the faces become friendlier as you go.
One other thing I wanted to mention too about your voice, we mentioned modulating your voice, speaking, projecting is always important. You want to make sure you're speaking loudly enough, but you're not yelling. There's a difference between yelling and projecting. You don't want to yell at your audience, but you want to throw your voice forward so that everyone can hear you. You may or may not be on a microphone. But even on a microphone, there is some element of projecting involved. You want to modulate your voice. You want to keep it interesting and not be monotone. Another thing you want to keep in mind is the speed at which you speak. You may have noticed I have a tendency to talk fast. I speak very quickly. That's my nature. And I'm always trying to kind of slow things down because I have so much to say and so little time to say it, and I just got to get it all out. So I have to talk really fast. And that's, if you can't listen so fast, it's not always effective. I had a student once in a technology class I was teaching from the South, and he came up to me and said, "Miss Trish, I just can't listen fast as you can talk." So I had to learn to slow things down. And I know I still am a relatively fast speaker. I grew up in northern New Jersey, and we speak quickly around here. That's just kind of the way it is. But not everyone lives where I live, and not everyone is used to listening as fast as I can talk. So I have to think about that when I present, when I teach. And that's something you may want to keep in mind as well. Or the opposite, if you tend to be a very slow, methodical speaker, you may want to consider speeding things up a bit and keeping your audience engaged that way. So voice is important on a lot of different levels.
Laura Lee, would this be a good time to just pause and see if there's any questions? I see some numbers flashing in front of me.
Sure. I haven't gotten anything in the chat box yet, but if anybody has a question specifically about these delivery skills, then we're open to them. Otherwise, I think we can just keep flipping ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Pause.
Let's see. One moment. Linda. Oh, she may have just put her hand down. I saw a hand raised.
Okay. All right, Linda.
Oh, here, sorry, one moment. Sandeep, I'm going to take you off mute for one moment. Go ahead. Oh, Sandeep, are you there? I think I just done.
Now, can you hear me now?
Sure can.
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious, how many people are attending this?
Looks like 21.
Sorry, this particular webinar?
Yeah.
About 20 or so.
Okay. I do want to say that both the presenters are doing a good job, whether slow or fast. I think you're keeping your pace, so you're definitely doing a good job.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I would like more questions like that.
Alrighty, content delivery. I think this particular piece of information will be very useful for those of you who are going into your business overview presentation with the Emerging Leaders group. If this is something that you're looking at in the very near future, I think that you can use this as the structure, the skeleton of your presentation. We're all presenting or teaching content, and it's very important to communicate that content, but we don't usually jump right into it. Starting with, okay, here's what I want to teach you. A, B, C, D, boom, 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 boom. We need to do it in a way that sets the stage and reiterates what you've said, but does this all seamlessly. If you have a very short presentation, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you will take this particular content delivery approach and use it once. If you have a longer presentation, you will use it many times. So you start off with an overview of what you want to present. Let your audience know where you're headed, what I'm going to talk about, just a general feel. We're going to be talking about presentation skills today, ways for you to improve your interaction with your audience so that they will understand better what you are delivering to them, what you're presenting to them. So you give them an overview of what you're going to be speaking about. Then you move into the details of what you're discussing, on the details of your topic. We just covered a bunch of techniques, 7 or 8 techniques. These are the details. This is each detail, the details of the details. Only what you need to say. Don't ramble. Don't get off topic. Stick to the point, but present your details. And then when you're done, you want to summarize what you've just said. You want to kind of the opposite of your overview. You've given the details. We've presented this to you. We hope that this will help you to better engage your audience, to feel more confident, and so on. And then possibly segue into the next topic. If you're giving a short presentation, this is all you need. You need your overview, you need your details, and you need to summarize. If you are giving a longer presentation, you then need to segue gracefully into the next topic that you'll be covering. So you can use this over and over as you go through your presentation. And that way you're kind of setting the stage, you're giving the specifics, you're giving a brief summary, you're looking for your audience's agreement that they know where you're going, they understood what you said, they're validating that you covered what you said you would cover, and then you move on.
This is a great technique for your presentations coming up. One of the things that I'll be talking about when we review the growth plan presentation is that oftentimes the presenter's trying to give everything, in a 3, 5, 7-minute window. I don't know how much time you guys have, but they're trying to tell everything about what they just learned over the last 8 months and fit it into that, 5, 7-minute window. And my tip to you, which you'll see later, is pick 2 or 3 key items that you want to communicate and use this technique, apply this technique to those 2, 3 items. As Tricia said, an overview of that item, the details of that item, and then your summarization of that item, but have a smooth segue to the next topic. And that smooth segue becomes critically important because oftentimes if that's not clear that you're moving off topic, all of a sudden you're talking about the next item and your audience is still on the previous one. And they're trying to figure out whatever you're talking about, how does this apply to that first item? And while they're trying to figure all this out, you're talking and you're having a great time talking, and half your audience doesn't even know what you're talking about. Because they took the time, they paused from you, they disengaged from you to try to do this mapping of what you're saying and how that applies to the previous topic. So as you summarize, make sure that your segue is clear and concise, that you've now changed to the next topic, but you want that smooth transition to get there. Really important. Now, I know in New Jersey, we were not allowed to use slides in our presentation. So, but this is still very important to cover. So we're going to cover it anyway, because like I said, tomorrow, next week, next month, you're going to have a slide presentation. And the key here, when you're dealing with slides, and this is one of these ones we can't really practice in front of you, but this is the best way to do it. You've probably been in that presentation where your presenter's been in the front of the room, they have the clicker in the hand, they have the slide up, and they have their whole audience excited to hear what they have to say, and then they turn around and they start reading the slides. There's nothing worse that will lose an audience than having the speakers back to them the bulk of the time. Our encouragement to you and guidance and best practice is the following: know your content. Know your content. Tricia and I could talk to this content, never look at the slide. We would know what is on the slide. We would know the title of the slide, the flow of the slide. Know your content. Know your content. And in case I wasn't clear, know your content, because you are the expert for that duration in front of the room. And what you communicate when you have to turn and read your slide is that you're not the expert, or you're not confident with the material. And too many speakers, because they don't they're not comfortable with the eye contact, they're not comfortable being in front of the room, the slide becomes that security blanket that they don't want to give up. So they turn their back to their audience, the one group that for that period of time is the most important group that they're facing that day. So always know your slide. Do not use your slide as a security blanket, but more as something that the audience can look at. Know your slide so well that you're communicating the message of the slide, but not reading the bullets of the slide. You'll also notice that the slides that you've seen up until this point are not very busy. We make sure that our slides are minimal on content and more on the pictures. So we use the slides as just a reminder of kind of where we're at, what message we want to communicate, and it gives the audience something that, you know, they're seeing. So you've got your audio and your visual. So when you're presenting from slides, the best technique is if be looking at your audience, it's okay to take a quick glance, just to look over your shoulder, just to kind of get a sense of, okay, I know that slide. And just collect your thoughts, a simple pause, just to collect your thoughts and make sure that, you know, you're in sync with the slide and you're going to move forward with that content. Then come back to your audience and make eye contact with that friendly face. Pick that one person that you're comfortable with and connect with your audience again, and then start talking and start sharing the information that they can clearly see up on the slide, but they're not seeing the back of your head. They're seeing your face. They're seeing the eye contact. They're seeing the facial expression. They're even when you turn away from the audience to just take a quick peek at the slide, you are re-engaging with them very quickly. Quick glance, you got the content, connect with somebody, move forward with your message.
And like Mike said, you're not reading your slide. Your slide is not a script. That's why you don't read it. That's why you don't read. Even if you know the content of your slide, you want to avoid reading it like a script because that is boring. Your audience can probably read it. Unless, of course, we were asked to do a presentation once, and the client we were asked to do the presentation for had the slides that they use. And they said, well, why don't you use our presentation and you can deliver it, put your spin on it. They gave us their presentation, and basically it was a scan of a document. The presentation, let me repeat, was a scan of a document. So every slide was a page from a document. That is not an effective way to give a presentation. If that were a script, boy, that would put people to sleep for sure. And as a slide, teeny tiny little writing and boring as anything. Needless to say, we had to put hours into creating an effective presentation to get the information across. And there's no way we're going to put up, a scan of a PDF of some sort of a document. So couple things here about how to deliver the content on a slide, but also, as Mike said, how to create your slides, keep them interesting and keep them minimalistic, interesting to look at, not a lot of sentences or paragraphs. There's rarely a need for something like that. Occasionally, you might need to quote something that's important, that you need to call someone's attention to, or some government regulation, something like that. But in general, there's no need to have full sentences and certainly not paragraphs of text on a slide. That brings us to our next point that I love to talk about, bringing the story to life. When I give a presentation, and it depends on what that presentation is going to cover, I like to tell a story. I don't like to reiterate bullet points. I like to tell a story. I like to know what I'm going to talk about and relate the story. The important thing here is knowing your content. You need to know your material. You need to be familiar with it. I remember the first formal presentation I ever gave. Many of us here in the audience can probably remember way back in high school. I believe I was a sophomore, and we all had to give a 10-minute speech. It was toward the end of the year. It was a big deal. Everybody was worried and nervous about it, and you could do it on any topic. I picked a topic that I happened to be interested in, that I had been reading about, that I was familiar with, that was an interest of mine. So I had a good talking knowledge. I had a good general knowledge of this topic. put my presentation together, we were allowed to use 5 note cards, no more. And everyone wanted to use more, and they wanted to use big note cards, not little ones. I used 2 small note cards with a couple bullet points on it, stood up in front of the room and talked about my topic. And then I remember at the time, my teacher was amazed. I only had 2 note cards. The idea was that I knew my topic so well, I just needed a few trigger words. I needed a trigger word for the beginning of the presentation, a few trigger bullets for the middle of the presentation, and something to remind me how to wrap the presentation up. In that case, I knew my topic very well. I had a good talking knowledge of it. When people asked questions, I had the answers because I knew more than just the content of my presentation. I knew more than just the bullets on the slide. I know the topic well enough to know beyond what's written on the slide or in a list of bulleted points. So that's so important. I kind of took that with me and went forward with that mentality when I started teaching and doing presentations, to know the material well enough so that the slide becomes a bunch of trigger points, not so much a script as we mentioned. Even if you're not using slides, same thing. You'll have notes, you may have note cards, but you have a story to present. You want to stay on track, so you need something to keep you on track, but you don't want to overcompensate with something too busy, too many bullets, whether they're on note cards or on a slide. If you believe in your material, if it is very near and dear to your heart or something that you're very, very familiar with, do on a daily basis, believe strongly in, your audience will see that. They will hear that. It will come across in your presentation as you bring the story to life, as you share your professional and personal experiences, that they're not necessarily laid out in writing before them. They're just part of your story, and you're sharing your story with them. If you're discussing something that you're not quite as familiar with, just make sure you're well prepared. Go a little beyond where you need to be. Know a little more than you need to present to your audience so that you can field the questions when they come, and so that you can offer a little bit more insight than what is simply presented to them on a slide.
One bullet there, connecting with your audience. We talked about that early on with the eye contact and the facial expressions. This is where it becomes really important. Remember, those are techniques that you use throughout your presentation. And one technique for continuing to connect with your audience is feel free to share a personal story, something that lets them know that yes, you're there, you're the expert, you're sharing this information with them. But sometimes the presenter, especially if they're competent presenters, or if they're a leader in business and they're very well versed in the topic and all that, oftentimes the audience is intimidated, so they kind of shy back. Just by sharing a personal story, maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's something about your kids, maybe it's something that you're involved in, some cause or whatever, but sharing something on the personal level often helps that audience feel like, wow, you're just a regular guy. Wow, just somebody just like me, They have the same issues that I have. And so making yourself real, human, and not so far above them that they can't appreciate or understand where it is you're coming from. So don't hesitate to share something on the personal side as well.
We've covered most of these points already, but when you're bringing your story to life, you don't want to ramble. You want to approach the story strategically. You want to explain your key points, but not over-explain. You want to get the information across in as simple a way as possible. You don't want to overcomplicate what you're trying to have everyone understand. You want to keep it simple, concise. You don't want to go off on a rabbit trail. Telling stories is a great idea, but if you start getting into things that are irrelevant or completely off topic, then your audience is going to lose interest. So you want to have a strategic approach, explain your key points, keep it as simple as possible. Use those trigger words, as we mentioned, that will open up the next part of the topic or a deeper insight into the topic. Try to use your own experience so that your audience can relate to what you have done experientially. It's not all theory, it's real life stuff. I've done this. Here's a situation I've been in. Try to relate to situations you perhaps know that they've been in, or people in a similar industry, or other clients or coworkers that you're familiar with. You can describe examples that are real. They don't necessarily have to be from your own experience. So you explain what you're trying to teach them or present. You're keeping it simple. You're illustrating from experience, and then you're encouraging them to put into practice the topic that you're trying to convey, to how this is how you can use this in your own life. This is how you can use this in the workplace. This is how you can apply this to your specific or general situation. So keep your story strategic in approach, but keep it a story, not a bulleted list.
It's so appropriate that we're sharing this. As an example, I was at a men's conference not too long ago, and the speaker was just touted. Great speaker, dynamic, just an amazing speaker. And so it was a breakfast meeting, and there were probably 100 people in the room. And this speaker was amazing. He was energetic. He was dynamic. He walked the room. He did all the techniques. He was all over the place. But I leaned over to the guy that I had gone with, and I said, "This guy's a great speaker, but I don't have a clue what he's talking about." Because he was so energetic. He was so all over the place, but there wasn't a story. There wasn't a beginning, a middle, and end. There was no journey. It was just, shoot here, shot there, another shot there, another shot there. It was like trying to connect the dots was overwhelming, to the point where I was just like, okay, I'm listening to the speaker and I'm exhausted, but I don't have a clue what the message was. So really important to tell the story and understand that a story is a journey, and it does have a beginning, and it has the main part, and then it has an end. And so when you're being strategic in your message, make sure that you're staying on point, even though in a storytelling kind of fashion. Other things to be in mind is when you go from one topic to another, one thought to another, that jumping is really what can be distracting. So just, picture in your mind that you have a number of bullet points that you want to hit. This is very key for your upcoming presentation, for those of you that are going to be presenting your growth plans. Know the main points that you want to make, but make sure that you have some transition phrase that you're clearly communicating to the audience that I've given you my summary, I've given you the details of my topic, and I've given my overview, I've given my details of my topic, and now I'm giving you my summary. And then as I segue or I transition from this major topic to the next major topic, or one thought to the next, that we're always making sure that we're using a transition phrase that would clearly communicate to the audience, topic one is done, I'm now going to topic two. I'm on this journey, come with me. So you can use your transition phrases between one thought to another. If you're transitioning slides, you'll notice in our presentation that we actually have a transition slide. So when we're changing from one topic to another, we literally have a transition slide in there. So that communicates to the audience, okay, I have finished my topic A, and now I'm moving to topic B. It also helps if you're not even doing slides and you're going from one thought to the next. It just helps your audience know where you're going and that you're shifting. So this is not an exhaustive list, but these are just some good transition phrases. In addition to, so you're talking about topic A, and in addition to topic A, let me talk about topic B. Or instead of talking about topic A, I'd like to switch over now to topic B. Specifically, or for instance, let me share this. As a result of what I just told you, look what happened. So to illustrate, to sum up, finally, great closing phrase, or some of the others you might be surprised to know, or let's take a closer look at, or what I find most intriguing. So these are just some samples of transition phrases that can be used that will clearly communicate to your audience that you have now left one topic or one thought or one slide and you're moving to another. And especially as you're presenting with slides, if there's that pause or delay in between the switch, this is something that fills that space and clearly communicates the transition.
And it keeps it, regarding transitions, it does keep it flowing, where your audience won't even realize that you're switching to a new topic. And I mean that in a good way. If you're very choppy with your presentation, you're talking about one thing and then you're talking about another thing and you're talking about another thing, it becomes very choppy, and your audience, that can be very disconcerting to listen to. And they may not even realize you changed topics, whereas if you use the transition phrases, it doesn't call as much attention to changing topics, but it is much smoother, and your audience subconsciously knows, if not obviously, that you have changed topics. So it's actually, it's so effective to use transition phrases and to keep things moving along smoothly and logically. The next thing we want to talk a little bit about is the art of Q&A, the art of questions and answers, because it is an art. It's not simply, got any questions? Look for raised hands, answer the questions, move on. Question and answer time can be a very effective teaching tool. It's not just a way to, let's hope nobody asks any questions, move on to the next topic. You are hoping for questions generally because you want to talk more about this topic that you're so excited about, that you're so interested in, that you know so much about. You're hoping you get some questions that will maybe bring up some of the things you chose not to include in your presentation, but really did want your audience to know just a little bit about. So you want the art of questions and answers, the art of Q&A. Of course, you're going to address your audience and ask for questions. If people raise their hand, or it depends. If it's a very large audience or a smaller audience, people might just kind of shout things out, might raise their hand. There might be electronics involved as well. But ask for those questions. And when you get a question, don't just go right into the answer, but you want to make sure you heard and understood the question. You want to make sure your audience, the rest of the audience, has heard and understands the question. So you generally would like to rephrase the question. You don't necessarily want to repeat it verbatim, but you do want to repeat it in such a way. You may want to rephrase it so that you're looking at the person who asked the question and saying, did I get that right? Is this the question you're asking? So when they ask the question, you repeat it back to them in a slightly rephrased fashion. That way they can nod their head, yeah, that's what I'm asking. And also you made sure the rest of the room heard the question and understands what the question is. Then you proceed to answer the question. You don't necessarily want to answer that question for the single individual who posed the question. You want to answer the question for your entire audience. So you may begin to answer the question while making eye contact to the asker, but then very quickly move on to address the room with your answer to the question and make eye contact with others in the audience while you explain the answer to the question. You want to see agreement and understanding on the faces of everyone in the room, not just the person who asked the question. That way, you get to put forth maybe a little more information, and everyone benefits, not just the asker. Also, people tend to disengage. If you simply have one individual ask a question and you answer that individual, oftentimes other people in the room will just disengage, will start focusing on other things, stop listening to you, and it becomes this little one-on-one conversation. You don't want that to happen. You want at all times to be engaging the entire group. So you want to direct your answers to your entire group. And then you kind of oftentimes will want to return to the person who asked the question and make sure you fully answered that question, and that you answered the right question. Sometimes questions are outside the scope of the presentation. That's something where you can either right away address and say, well, you know what, that's really not something that is part of what we're covering here today. Perhaps we can talk about that offline or after, or in another forum, or you can send me an email or whatever. Or perhaps you want to give a short answer and say, that we'll digress a little too much if we pursue this further, but never make anyone feel as though their question wasn't worth asking. You want to make sure that you make other arrangements or find someone who can answer the question. If you can't, don't be afraid to say, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. That's a better answer than trying to answer something you really don't know the answer to and maybe answering it incorrectly. So if you don't have the answer to a question, be sure that you let your audience or the asker know that you will get them the information, or you can direct them to the source where they can find the answer themselves. So there's a lot to the art of Q&A, not just a quick hand up, quick answer, and moving on.
Yeah, it's so critical, Tricia. Some of the things that you were sharing, I couldn't help think of speakers that they've given a really nice presentation and they finish it with, anybody got any questions? And they look around with this nervous look on their face, like, please, please, please don't ask me a question. Totally taking the credibility that they built up and having it come crashing down because they were afraid to take a question. Or I love the speaker that ends with, well, if there are no questions, or since I'm the only thing standing between you and lunch, if there are no questions, what you're communicating is I just delivered the material, but I'm not comfortable engaging any further. So you quickly will lose the credibility that's been built. Encourage questions. Look, as business leaders, maybe you're doing business development, or you're doing sales, or you're selling your services, or your company capabilities. Like Tricia said, if your question time, that's a time for you to shine. Where someone asks a question that you're totally not expecting or knowing in advance what it is, and you step up with confidence and you answer that question, you provide even a little bit more. So don't be afraid to put a little tinge of marketing in that. And you will be surprised at how much the audience will engage. The other great point that Tricia made, and I want you to envision this, you're in a room, 30 people, 50 people, whatever it is, and one person asks you a question. A great way to really engage with that person is walk over to them, walk in their direction, make sure you've got the answer to the question. But as soon as you begin to answer the question, as Tricia mentioned, take eye contact away from the individual that asked the question and start communicating with your broader audience. The trap, if you don't, is everyone else thinks, well, we're done, I might as well start packing up. And they start packing up while you're engaged in this one-on-one conversation. The other thing that happens is you've given the person that asked the question, you're giving them permission to now have a follow-up question, and now have a follow-up question. And what often happens in scenarios like that is that one individual will then engage you in a conversation that your feet and your legs will tell you you're locked into, and you can't move away without offending them. So get in the habit of totally engage them while they're asking the question. But as soon as you begin the answer, engage the rest of the audience, because now what you've done is you've removed those ankle bracelets or those ankle locks so that you can move and you can engage the rest. And you're also communicating to the rest of the group, don't pack up your stuff. We're not done yet. There's still good information to be shared. Very important technique.
And that's also important, pretty kind of just rephrasing what Mike just said. If you don't want to pursue a question further, someone asks you a question, you answer the question, that's another important reason to move off that individual person into the rest of the room, address that answer to the rest of the room. And if you're still making eye contact with the asker, they're encouraged to pursue it, to drill down deeper, to ask more questions about that topic. And you may not want more questions on that topic. So if you've already averted your glance, you're addressing the answer to the rest of the room, you may physically be walking away from that person. You can finish answering that question and then say, are there any other questions? And with your body language, you're actually looking away from that person. Sometimes you need to do that. You certainly don't want to dissuade interaction or question asking, but there are people who do often want to monopolize the conversation, want to monopolize your attention, and you need to find subtle ways of discouraging that. And that's just part of managing your audience. And these things happen sometimes, and it's an effective, subtle way of doing that by simply kind of disengaging and engaging someone else somewhere else, as well as you perhaps wander around the room and walk away from the asker. So that's just another little tip.
And another great opportunity during the questions is you may realize that there was something that you meant to mentioned during the bulk of the presentation. Or it may be something that during the question and answer that some piece of information popped into your head and you're thinking to yourself, wow, I wish I had added that into the presentation. So when you disengage from the questioner and you begin talking to the rest of the group and that thing pops in your head, again, remember, we're in the business of growing our businesses and making business happen and all that stuff. So it's a good time to get off topic. And if there's something else that you wanted to mention or some point about your organization that you wanted to get out, or you want to leave that little nugget with your audience, you can say, that reminds me of, and then, go into a little bit of that extra piece, that extra nugget that you wanted to share with the group. It's a very, very effective way to handle that.
And this is an example of exactly what Mike just did when he said, that reminds me of such and such a topic. In other words, I would like to, you can use these phrases, these prompts and probes as they're called, to clarify during Q&A, to either clarify what the asker is asking or to further elaborate or clarify your answer, to go a little further, a little deeper, or to get acceptance of what was originally asked. Questions asked, and you say, well, tell me more. Tell me a little bit more about where you're going with this or what you're trying to ask. When the question has been asked, you may want to, as we mentioned, rephrase it. Well, in other words, what you're saying is this, and look for agreement from the asker. You may want to encourage questions. So maybe you don't get any questions, or maybe you just get one question and the audience is kind of just sitting there with blank stares on their face. You may want to draw them out a little bit. So someone asks a question, why did you ask that question? Tell me, what do you have going on that would prompt you to ask that question? What else comes to mind? Give me an example, or you give the example. You give a general example and then you give a more specific example. So these are little tips to use during Q&A that will get clarification on what's being asked, and then perhaps take it in another direction or a little deeper with the question and keep the Q&A session fresh. Not, well, no more questions. Okay, let's just move on. This way it becomes an active part of your presentation and not just this little obligatory question phase that you have to kind of stick in there. Didn't go anywhere. Let's move off of here. You're using it in a constructive way and going perhaps a little deeper, a little further with it, getting a little clarification and making sure that you're addressing what's actually being asked. And you may actually generate more questions in the process.
These are great techniques in a number of different areas. One is you want further clarification. So if someone from the audience asks me a question and I'm just looking at them like a deer in the head, like I don't have a clue what you just asked me. Credibility is everything, right? So we don't want to communicate that I don't have a clue. I want to find a way to, with credibility, gain more information. So a phrase like, tell me more. Give me more, tell me more. That's just a way. Or I can ask the same person, well, for example, give me an example. Or maybe I can say, I can leverage my audience to help me out. So I pick on someone else. Trisha, was that appropriate? I pick on somebody else? Call on someone else and say, Tom, could you give me an example? Do you have an example you could share with the group on what Bob is communicating? And it might be that person that you recognize is really relating to, Tom's asking me the question and Bob's shaking his head like, oh yeah, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Hey Bob, could you share maybe an example of what the other one's talking about? So it's a great way to buy yourself some time so you can, think through it a little bit. It's a great way of asking for more information and not sounding like you don't understand what's being asked. And it's also a great technique for engaging other people within the audience on the question, because too often in a Q&A session that one person can potentially dominate and the others, as Trisha mentioned, kind of check out. It's a great way to engage other people. Specifically, give me a specific example, or specifically more information, or what else can you tell me about this situation that would be helpful? And it's okay to ask why. why is that important, or why does it work that way, or why do we need to do that? Tricia and I find ourselves in scenarios where we're helping organizations define process or something with their cybersecurity, or something on that. And there's always that individual that says it has to be done this way. It has to be done this way. And you say, well, why? Why does it have to be done that way? Because if I understand why, I can adjust. But sometimes it's just a perception that it has to be done that way. So it's okay. It's okay to ask the why question. So you've gone through your presentation. You had a strong start. You had a strong storytelling as you went through your presentation. You've gone through your Q&A session. You know that you've handled all of that well. But what they're going to remember is how you closed it out. So always close it out with confidence, with clarity, be concise, be appreciative. So that audience just sat through 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever it might be. You're going to be with us for an hour and a half. We appreciate the time that you took to sit through and hear what we had to say. And so when you close off your presentation, make sure that what you communicate is, this was great. Thank you so much for taking the time. Appreciate your attention, appreciated your input, enjoyed the conversation. Make sure that they know that you appreciate it, and you will be surprised at how many people will come up to you and let you know how much they appreciate it. So there's a couple of different techniques for closing. One we'll just call the quick close. You give a quick summary. You're out of time. You got to close it off. People are knocking at the meeting room door. They're trying to get in for the next meeting. So you got to do a quick close. Summarize, give them some motivating message or something that they can take with them, and make sure that you give them a big thank you for their time and listening. The second technique is more of a key learning close. You did your final Q&A. You're summarizing something, and you're leaving them with a nugget, something of value that they can take with them. What we're hoping to do today is leave you with some nuggets that will, for those of you that are going to be presenting your growth plans, some key nuggets that will really help you with that presentation. So there's value in that close. Well, I'm not going to do question. I wanted to go right into Q&A. So that's our formal presentation. I'm looking at the time. It's I've got 12 after, but I wanted to, if we had additional time, we were going to have some folks jump in and do a strong opener for us, and a couple do a strong close for us. But why don't I save that and hit some tips for your upcoming presentation if you're going to be presenting your growth plan. Laura Lee, I'm going to assume that would be okay to do that.
Yep. You lost her.
No, we didn't.
Sorry, I was still muted. I just wanted to let you know we have a couple questions waiting in the wings. So as long as we leave room for that, I think it's great to talk about growth plan presentations now. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I will go very quickly through this, but I just wanted to show you that I did have a growth plan here, and it was 18 or 20 pages or so. And there's a lot of good information here. And I'm hoping that you can't read that fast, but you'll notice that there's a lot of good information in here. The mistake that I have seen, not only as a participant in the program, but also as one of the reviewers at times, is that the individual presenting is trying to put their entire growth plan that they worked on for for almost 8 months. They're trying to put it in a 5 or 7 or 10 minute window. You can't possibly do that. So let's just go through some of these things, and hopefully they're helpful for you. Number one is have a way of tracking your time. Know how much time you have And remember that you have to allocate some time for Q&A, just as we're doing here. So make sure you know what your time allotment is and that you've practiced it enough times to make sure that you're communicating what you need to within that allotment of time. The other thing is that some folks practice. Tricia will tell you that she probably does more practice than I do. I'm better off the cuff. But you still, in practicing, I may not be saying the words, but I certainly would have an outline of knowing what I want to talk about. So I was going to show it to you, but I think for sake of time, I'm going to save it. But literally took my growth plan and put it into a few bullet points that I wanted to make sure that I talked about. Don't try to cover everything in your growth plan. The judges or the folks that you're presenting to, the business leaders you're presenting to, they're not necessarily interested because it is such a short window. They know that you can't cover every detail. So they're not necessarily interested in every detail. But what they are interested in are what are those 2 or 3 top items that are going to have a positive business impact to you and your organization. So identify those 2 or 3 things that you want to hit, those 2 or 3 topics where you can go through the summary, the details, or the overview, the details, and the summary, and then wrap around to the next one through your transition phrases. So identify those 2 or 3, focus on those. And focus on those areas that imply growth, because you may have a number of topics in your area, and some would, arguably everything is for growth, but there'd be some that maybe they're more administrative or more HR or whatever they might be, but focus on those items that are growth related. Everything's going to impact growth, but focus on those topics that are really in the marketing and sales or partnering and partner enablement, whatever it might be, but those growth areas. And be enthusiastic. This is your growth plan. You've just invested 7-8 months in a program to help your business run more effectively, more efficiently. Be excited about, not nervous about, excited about the fact that you're now being able to take what you learned through these last number of months and share it with this group of individuals as well as your classmates, that you're excited about what the future holds. Let that come through. Do it with confidence. Do it with confidence, and make sure that you do it with confidence. That will come through. When you get into the Q&A session, please, please, please don't try to answer the question or anticipate the question before the person who's asking it finishes the question. Make sure you allow them to finish, listen intently, make sure you're hearing the question clearly, and then answer the question. Stay focused on answering the question. Don't ramble in your answer. This is the time not to ramble with your answers to your question, because you want to answer the question, because there are other judges or other people participating that want to ask a question as well. And if you ramble, you're going to run out of time, and then that individual won't have the opportunity to ask the question that they wanted to ask that might help your business. I'm sure there's a number of other things that we could share, but I thought this would be very helpful for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Laura Lee, why don't I turn it back to you? And
Sure. One other quick thing that I wanted to add, I really appreciate you adding that slide, specific to the growth plan presentations. And I think so many of those points are also relevant to business presentations, to sales pitches, to other places where you're all going to be presenting. And one thing that I would add is, as much as you can, if you can, knowing your audience. So especially in the growth plan presentations, find out from your instructor who's going to be sitting on the panel, because that can be a really helpful way to choose those 2 or 3 things to focus on from your growth plan. If you know that there's going to be a marketing expert, if you know that there's going to be an investor, if you know that there's going to be a loan officer, then that can help you kind of drill down and figure out what exactly to focus on during your presentation, and maybe even prepare for some questions that might be coming from those people. So I just wanted to add that, because I think that slide in particular is going to be very, very helpful for our participants, and I really appreciate you guys putting that together.
Perfect.
So I have 2 questions that I want to highlight here. And Sandeep, I'm going to unmute you again so you can ask yours live. And then I also have one from Shailesh that was typed in, so I'll communicate that. So let's see. There you go, Sandeep. You should be unmuted now.
Okay, thank you. So one of the things that I felt unclear about was when you're talking about slides and you say, oh, slides are not allowed. And I wanted to just get clarification as to what you are doing. Are they not called slides? Because I know one of the other way you can do apart from PowerPoint presentation is Prezi. I hope I'm not mispronouncing or
Prezi, Prezi.
Okay. So that is one way of doing a presentation, but that still is a presentation. And it shows a path of where you're going, and you pre-schedule that path, and then during the presentation people can see.
Yeah.
But I wanted you to just clarify what you're doing. Could that be called a slide, or this is not called a slide?
Sure. So when I was actually talking about that, what I said was, in New Jersey, when I went through the Emerging Leaders Program, we were not allowed to use slides or anything like it. So you couldn't use a presenter from from Apple. You couldn't use Prezi. I actually did one thing using Prezi because I love the tool. It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. So the clarification to that comment is, in New Jersey in 2015, we were not allowed to use slides. I don't know. You talk to your instructors and how they want it, because if they're fine with slides, there's no restriction. If they say no slides, no slides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's generally a best practice across most of our programs, but there are some cases, I think, where people are able to use presentations. So yeah, that's perfect, Mike. Just kind of check with your instructors, guys, if you have presentations coming up, to see what additional tools you're able to use.
Right.
And if I could just interject one thing too, if you're not able to use slides or any kind of audio, video, Prezi, PowerPoint, whatever, not allowed to use any of that, don't hesitate, if it's appropriate, to use other kinds of visual aids, props, or something that you can show your audience, that you bring with you, some sort of a prop that is appropriate to what your business does or what you're trying to communicate. That's always something to keep in mind. If it's appropriate, it may or may not be. You may have 3 or 5 minutes, but visual aids are always a great thing to keep in mind to keep your audience engaged and to really give a very I don't know what I'm trying to say here, just a little bit more of a real touch to what you're trying to convey.
Props are great.
Proper visual aid.
Right. Props are great. In our class, we had a marketing company, and before infographics were like super popular, he basically created a big poster infographic. And he wasn't doing slides. He wasn't going through PowerPoints, but he had that visual, as Tricia mentioned, that actually came across very, very well, very polished. And it was kind of that infographic type of prop. Laura Lee, you said you had another question?
Yes, and this is really interesting. So this business owner is talking about how most of their presentations are actually set to stand at a podium because the presentation is recorded. Mm-hmm. And then also the audience is seated in a commission-style chamber setting, where there are just 4 or 5 people. So what are some suggestions that you have, 1, for not being able to move around the room, and 2, locking onto one person, as you were talking about, without ignoring the other people on the panel?
So I absolutely hate being tied to a podium. You can see it. I cringe. If that's what you're locked into, that's what you're locked into. You can always ask up front, do they have a portable mic or a wireless mic that you can plug on and walk around? But if you're tied to that podium, so your movement, your physical movement of location is going to be limited to that podium area. But don't let that stop your movement. Use your facial expressions, use your hands, use your body language to your advantage. And you have to almost emphasize it a little bit more than you normally would, because you are kind of tied behind that podium. So there's not much you can do when that's the case, but don't stand at it. Here's some tips at the podium. Number one, don't stand at attention the whole time. Don't be rigid. Don't grab onto the sides of the podium. As soon as you grab onto the sides of the podium, here's what happens. As you get nervous, you squeeze. As you squeeze, your knuckles turn white. You look like a scared rabbit. Don't grab onto the podium. Don't lean on the podium. All of a sudden, you put your arms on the podium and your posture is just out of whack. You're leaning on the podium. Now you're slouching. Now you're really locked in. So, the podium is kind of your base where you have to be, but don't use it as that safety blanket, or you'll be amazed at what happens. How you just get so dependent. Like now you're hugging it. Like, please, podium, stay in front of me. Don't move. So you don't want to communicate that. And I'll have Tricia share her thoughts as well. The other thing on eye contact, remember, you're not locking in on one person for the time of the presentation. You're locking on that one person for a window of time. And what's that window of time? Some people say, lock in and count for 3 seconds. Well, I, for one, am more focused on what I'm presenting, not on counting. What you want to do is you want to lock that eye contact. And when you shift it to the next person, you want it to be on a natural phrase. So you don't want to shift in the middle of a phrase, because then it looks like you're darting. So what you want to do is you want to have that communication. When you come to a natural phrase, so if I'm talking to Laura Lee, there's a natural phrase, or a natural pause, and then I shift over to Tricia, and I have another part of the conversation, and maybe after this, Tricia, we'll grab some lunch, and there's a natural pause, and then I look over at Tom and I say, Tom, if you're interested, you could join us. So you're not locking into one person for the whole time. What you're doing is you're locking that eye contact for a window of time so that both you and he or she know that you're engaged. And then you shift your eye contact when you have that natural pause within a sentence or a paragraph. I personally like to stay locked in for a little bit, because now I really want to engage and I want to feel comfortable. I want to feel like I'm having a conversation with that person. And then when it's natural, you make the shift to somebody else. So if you have 3 people in the room, you're bouncing back and forth between three people the whole time. But you're not darting between those 3 people. If you're in a room with 100 people, still do the same thing. Pick the one person, have that little bit of a conversation, natural pause, go to the next, natural pause, go to the next. Hope that helps. Tricia, any additional thoughts?
I think she's muted.
Yeah, she might be muted. Oh, I heard her say, whoop.
Oops, sorry about that. Sorry about that. It was saying I was unmuted, but I wasn't, and then it was going back to mute. And I lost my train of thought.
Natural pauses.
Yeah, actually, I was thinking about when you said, what do you do if you really can't move around? You're kind of stuck behind a podium or whatever. One thing about podiums, if at all possible, if that's the case, hopefully, and you see a lot of this more commonly today, but the acrylic podiums are definitely preferred to a big giant chunk of wood. So if at all possible, a transparent podium is the way to go there. So there's less of a barrier between the presenter and the audience. So if that's an option, certainly take advantage of that. Also, like Mike said, basically you really want to engage your audience as much as you possibly can with facial expressions, with big eyes, and using your hands. And if you really can't move around much, you can lean into your audience physically a little bit, lean over your any kind of a lectern that you may have there. But the best way to engage your audience there is voice modulation, facial expressions, using your hands as much as you possibly can. You don't, want to come across like a clown up there, but you certainly want to try to overcome some of that physical the fact that you really can't get out of that spot. You want to overcome that as much as you can with other kinds of techniques.
Perfect. Do we have another question?
That's all I have from the audience at the moment.
After almost
Last call.
90 minutes, that's it? What about just war stories or anything that you guys would like to talk about or get some insight in?
I also just want to remind people too, especially those of you preparing for your growth plan presentations, we do have an Ask an Expert discussion going on in iConnect. So if there are things that come up after this presentation that you still have questions about as you're preparing your own, or maybe even a few weeks down the line, if yours aren't until October or so, feel free to use that discussion forum. There are alumni there as well, and Mike is a part of iConnect, so that's another place just to get some good information and advice as you're preparing.
Feel free to reach out to us there. If
Great.
Trish and I do some one-on-one at times, if you're just looking for some one-on-one help or whatever, feel free to reach out to us. Happy to assist.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you guys so much for doing this presentation. I want to let you have a proper closing. I think it's fantastic that you're sharing your contact information. And for everybody that is on the line, we will be sharing this recording. We'll post it on iConnect. Somebody even mentioned that they're excited to take it back to their CEO mentoring group, those who weren't able to attend. So feel free to, share it with your classmates as well.
Absolutely.
But thanks, Mike and Tricia, and I'll let you guys sign off.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all for your time. I'd be interested to learn where everyone is from at some point. I'm sure possibly, Laura, you could share that with us. But it's been wonderful coming to you all here from Northern New Jersey. I hope everyone is safe with the storms that we have moving up the East Coast. But it really has been our pleasure to share with you today.
Yep. Laura Lee, and we're always happy to participate in these kinds of things. So thank you for having us, and for everyone who joined, thank you for listening in. We hope it was helpful. Go out, do a great job with your presentations, use the techniques that you learned here today, and shoot a note back and let us know how it went.
Thank you, guys. We will talk to everybody very soon.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Bye-bye.